Hey, this is Sky. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Go check out my website at skysworld.com for life coaching and mentoring. It's Sunday, bright and early, daily discipline, mind, body, and soul. This is how we get through. Let's do our Sunday study group for warriors. Let's get into it. We're living in a fractal, holographic universe. The entire universe, all matter, is nothing more than particles of light. A hologram. You'd have to go down to the smallest things to be able to prove this. Smaller than atoms. So we're living in a light matrix, which is really just a shadow. Everything we see is just a shadow of a world that exists in a higher dimension. So fourth dimensional objects cast three-dimensional shadows. A three-dimensional object will cast a two-dimensional shadow. Everything is just a shadow of something in a different dimension. It's weird to think about. Let's move on to the next one. Some people believe that there's only one consciousness. We feel like that we're separate. My consciousness is different than your consciousness, and we're different people. We may be on the different sides of the planet, having different experiences. But it's thought that there's only one consciousness, that consciousness is only one thing. It's not divided. However, it is coming out of many frequencies. So, there may be a radio broadcast, and then millions of people can tune into it. All with their little radio. And my radio is not your radio. But we're all catching the same stream. You know, some people believe that we're avatars. That we're this, our consciousness is somehow trapped inside of our head. Almost as if you were to cut the head open, the skull open, you'd find a little guy in there, a little man inside there, sitting in a chair with a little video game controller. But we're not avatars. We're just light. Vibrating at a frequency. That's all that's going on. Let's move on to the next one. It's been theorized that consciousness is not a part of brain function. That's weird to think about. Because if I shoot you in the head and your brain is no longer functioning, you lose consciousness, don't you? Except for the fact that we can't explain death. These after-death experiences. We can't explain out-of-body experiences, and those happen when you're alive. Have you ever had an out-of-body experience? I had one once. I was at the dentist office. My girlfriend drove me because I had to have a root canal, and whatever, they put you to sleep. So they have to have someone to drive you home because you feel a little bit weird after when you wake up. And when they put me to sleep, as they were putting me under, they put the mask on my face, and as I was losing consciousness, my mind, I should say, left my body, and I was on the ceiling, looking down at the room, looking down at the dentist and the dentist nurse, whatever you call her, dental practitioner, what do you call those chicks, as they're hovering over me. And then I floated out into the waiting room and saw the action out there and saw that my girlfriend was reading a magazine with Sybil Shepherd on it. It was like Cosmopolitan or something. And then I, was back in my body. The operation was over. And when I was done with it, I told her all about it. And she didn't believe me. And I told her, you were reading that magazine right there. And then she believed me because she was reading that magazine. So if you have an out-of-the-body experience, like I had, and many people have those, what's the deal? Your brain is unconscious. I was unconscious. They put me to sleep with their gas. But somehow my consciousness left my body. It had nothing to do with my body at that moment. Let's move on to the next one. When you look around, so you can look around the room, when you look around with your eyes, who is it that's seeing? Now this may take you right back to the Avatar fantasy, that you think there's a little man inside your head, or that your consciousness is somehow trapped inside your head, and that's who's seeing out. The real you is stuck inside of you. Maybe it's your soul. It's some energy that you think is you. Who is it? Well, it's not your brain that looks out. Your brain isn't looking out of your head. And it's not your eyes. Your eyes are useless. Your eyes are just windows. This whole idea of consciousness is fascinating to me because it's hard to describe, it's hard to explain of what it actually is, of what we actually are. So let's go a little further with this. When we talk about consciousness, we have to divide it into 3 different levels. Here's the 3 levels of consciousness. You have your unconscious state, or your sleep. And that's a fascinating realm because you slip into another dimension, like almost literally. It's thought that sleep, that form of imagination, is another dimension. So you have the unconscious realm, which is kind of a magical realm. Pyramids can turn into pink elephants and fly away if you want it to. Have you ever had a lucid dream where you take control of your dream and you can just do whatever you want? That's power. You become literally a god. So we have unconsciousness. We have consciousness. If you're unconscious, you can be conscious. That feels like the opposite of unconscious. Who knows if it is? If it's just a different state of the same experience. And consciousness is our waking time. That's what's going on right here, right now. We can share consciousness. You can't share unconsciousness. I can't sleep next to you and have the same dream. But we can stand next to each other and have a similar experience. And then there's superconsciousness. And you can access your superconsciousness by taking psychedelics. That's one way. Becoming a shaman. There's all kinds of ways you can access the superconscious realm and gain so-called mystical powers. Here's a question for you. I used to have this friend of mine, Shonda. She was a weird chick, man. She was cool though. She had a kid. And I only mention that because she was 6'3", 370 pounds. She looked like George Foreman. She had not a bit of femininity in her. A little thin mustache. I mean, she had tits and everything. She wasn't a transvestite. She was a chick. Some guy, some dude fucked her. I don't know who took one for the team, but she was a cool chick. I'm not trying to dog Shonda. She was a cool chick, man. Straight up gangster. Absolutely. And she used to say all the time, her catchphrase was, "What's really going on?" That's what she would always say. What's really going on? Well, here's the question. How do you know what is really going on? A lot of us think we know what's really going on. We think we really have it down, like we understand things. But this is a conundrum of our being. How do we know what reality really is? Reality could mean something for us as an individual. My reality can be different than your reality. And if my reality is different than your reality, how do we decide what's really going on? How do we collectively come together every day and step out of our house and agree that we're all in this same world? Is the world being created by us collectively? Some people think that only a warrior knows that culture is a game. A lot of people get really tripped out on culture. But a warrior knows that culture, what you call culture, is just a game you're playing. It doesn't really matter. The food you eat, the songs you sing, the God you pray to, the clothes you wear, the history that you have, the heritage that you hold to. What else are aspects of culture? Your language. It could be the way you talk, the way you walk, all kinds of things. Your hair. You could look at your skin color. Oh, there's all kinds of things you could look at as culture. The warrior knows. None of it matters. It's all a bunch of nonsense. It's a stupid game that you guys play. You take it real serious. It doesn't mean a goddamn thing. It has nothing to do with anything, really. It's a distraction. It's silliness. Play it if you want, but you take it so serious. The warrior doesn't take that shit serious because it has nothing to do with anything. It's not important. Let's go to the next one. The warrior doesn't care about your trinkets and your technology. You can show up with technology that has buttons and lights and does all kinds of things, makes life so convenient. The warrior cares not about convenience. You show up with your gifts. None of it matters to the warrior. When you show up with that stuff to the warrior, with your gifts, your trinkets, trying to impress him, all he does is stare at you with dead eyes. Because all that matters is a man's soul. The warrior understands. Here's a question that you can ask yourself. How should you face something that you don't understand? How do we go into the unknown? It's hard for us to accept the unknown. We have to make sense of it, and most times we'll make up a lie. We'll make up a fantasy, willingly and knowingly, knowing that it's not true, that it's possibly just a fantasy, but we'll make something up and put it in there as a placeholder because we can't have an empty slot. We can't just have something that's unknown, something that we don't understand. It can paralyze people. We'll just stand and stare at something, stare at a picture for an hour and just not knowing what it is. They can't move, they're just captured by it. I was driving yesterday and I came to the stop sign near my house, and really nice white Mercedes, much too expensive of a vehicle to be in this neighborhood. I live in a working class neighborhood. I am not Andrew Tate. And this Mercedes had to have been worth over $100,000, nice vehicle. And I checked it out because I'm a car guy, I like cars. And I saw the guy driving it. I could see the figure. I couldn't tell what his clothes were. I couldn't tell what his face was. I couldn't even see eyes, nose, and a mouth. And I drove by looking at him, kind of just like, what the fuck did I just see? I thought about it for hours. I'm still kind of thinking about it. What the hell was driving that Mercedes? Was it the Predator? Was it a shape-shifting lizard person? What was driving that car? Didn't look human. I don't know what it was. My eyes didn't register it. It's disturbing. How do you face what you don't understand? Let's go on to the next one. We have time. We'll do one more. Let's end it with a good one. Are you still blaming your parents for being born? There's so many people that do that. So many people angry that they were born with this bratty mentality. I didn't ask to be here. Like a kid who was forced to come along on a field trip. I didn't want to come. You expect me to do this, do that, to participate, to be a good person, to give a shit? I didn't ask to be here. It's just a childlike mentality. And what comes along with that is usually this attitude of a monster, where they don't want to take responsibility for their actions. So you say, I didn't ask to be here, and you can't blame me for my actions because you created this monster. So So when you create a monster, why would you go and cry when that monster that you created goes and does what monsters do? Tears the shit up. Monsters wreck shit. Take responsibility for your life. Have you ever thought about this, that it's very possible that you asked to be here, that you asked to be born, that not only did you ask to be born, but that you asked for your parents? You asked to be born in this time, in this state of mind, in that body that you have. You asked for all of this before you were born. Stop blaming anyone. It's not God's fault. It's not the world's fault. It's not your parents' fault. Food for thought.